I'm here with my friend Jennie today, who has known me since I was a teeny tiny child, and who I have long shared a passion for Lord of the Rings with. I think that you helped to inspire the Lord of the Rings obsession.
My work here is done.
So we just wanted to talk a little bit today about the horses in Lord of the Rings, some of the horse actors in Lord of the Rings, and just like nerd out for half an hour or so. So I guess first, do you have any broad thoughts about the horses, the Rohirrim mostly, I guess, or what are in the main stories?
So I had Lord of the Rings read to me when I was 8. So like I've been doing this for a very long time now. We're closing in on 40 years of Lord of the Rings. And even at 8, the Rohirrim were my very favorite. I actually wasn't even writing yet when I was 8, but like all 8-year-olds, I really wanted to be. And once I did start writing, I started when I was 12. My friends and I would like go in the woods and pretend that, we were on great adventures and on our way to rescue people and whatever. We also did a whole lot of things that I just can't admit to because the adults that, were supposed to be supervising us are still alive and they might be horrified. Oh, there'll be some deathbed confessions.
Those are the best.
In a few decades. So, I think, the reason that horses are popular in mythology in general is it's just kind of like the idea of like galloping away on horseback is just this like kind of romantic notion, not romantic like love, romantic like poetry that speaks to all of us. And especially in the modern day when we can imagine this world without being able to call an Uber to get to Gondor. Nobody's ever mentioned how much faster that would have been. And
the Battle of Helm's Deep would have been a lot different if the Rohirrim rolled up on tanks.
Right. Let's get a little heavy weaponry here. Sorry, Saruman. I mean, he invented dynamite. Like, my favorite chapters are like the Ride of the Rohirrim and the Battle of Pelennor Fields and the whole like charge. Peter Jackson and I have that in common. And so that's just kind of, even to the present day, all of my horse friends and I joke about how we could ride off with Aragorn and Gandalf on our great adventure. But we've never stopped. I have not seen the War of the Rohirrim.
No, it like just came out.
Yeah. But I mean, the rest of them I saw at midnight. So.
Oh, well then I guess you're slacking.
I'm going to damage my nerd credentials here and say I really don't like anime.
Oh no, you are going to damage your nerd credentials.
Like, I have nothing against it, like, it's an art form, it's fine, people do like it. But, just like when you go to the art museum and you like some of the art and some of it, you're like, that doesn't really speak to me. So, like, I'll probably actually wait until it's free and then, like, watch it for the sake of completeness. But paying for movie tickets to watch something that always just leaves me going, doesn't seem like a wise investment of my money.
I can't really fault you for that.
I'll buy more horse stuff instead.
So, in context of Lord of the Rings, I think that probably the two most popular horses are Shadowfax and Bredo. And even outside of that, I don't know if most people know Bredo and know which horse that is, which is Aragorn's horse.
Only in the movies.
Only in the movies. That's right. He is
an entirely different horse in the book. Fun fact.
Yes.
And here in a minute, I'll think of its name.
Well, you're definitely going to be quicker at that than I am because I will not think of his name. Bredo is named in the books, isn't he? He's just somebody else's horse. He's an elf's horse, isn't he?
Brago is was the original builder of Medjugorje. He was a human.
Oh.
And he's only mentioned, like in a poem. He was dead a long time before the book started.
Well, my curiosity is, beyond those two, do you have a favorite horse in the Lord of the Rings mythos?
That's an interesting question.
Because I think every horse girl has had the, like, imagining whistling across the plains and Shadowfax comes galloping towards you.
I always, in my, like, stories as a kid, I was writing Hasufel, which I think was just because I really liked the way the name sounded, which is the horse that Eomer gives to Aragorn when they meet on the plains, when Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas are chasing the orcs. So he has a very, like, reasonably small part, but he has a cool name.
If there's something Tolkien can be counted on for, it's a cool name.
And of course, we talked about Asfaloth, who I always appreciated. Like, I want the horse that you can be like semi-unconscious and then, somebody puts you on the horse like by yourself because in the books, Arwen slash Glorfindel, who it is in the books, is like not on the horse with Frodo, but this horse will not let you fall off. Like, that's part of the story. He won't let you fall off. Just go. You're safer with the horse than you are with us. And I just want to say that, like, on cross country, that would be amazing.
If you had a horse that just like wouldn't let you fall off.
Yeah, like just magically I am not falling off of this horse. I would be so much braver.
So much braver.
You'd see me at Rolex next.
I think that a horse like that might look at some of the cross-country fences that we ask them to do and be like, I can't keep you safe over that, actually. I think maybe we shouldn't do that one.
And of course, like, I always wanted to be Gandalf riding Shadowfax, like, as in terms of the character, where you could just ride bareback with no bridle or no halter and no danger. Because, you know, I could get on bareback with no bridle and no halter, but there would always be something of a risk that something could go wrong in that process, especially if I went galloping across the plains.
Or charging into battle.
Yes.
Did you know that in the movies, Asphaleth is played by 3 different Andalusians?
I didn't remember it was 3, but I remembered it was multiple.
3 different Andalusians, and Arwen's actress had 2 different stunt doubles for riding.
And Liv Tyler is terrified of horses, so all the shots of her on a horse, she's actually riding a barrel.
Oh, that I didn't know. That's so funny. Liv Tyler and Viggo Mortensen had 2 diametrically opposed experiences with the horses in Lord of the Rings then.
Viggo now, I'm pretty sure, actively seeks out movies where he can ride horses. Liv is like, no.
Here's where we have to make the customary, the usual, the played out, did you know that Viggo Mortensen adopted the horse after the filming of Lord of the Rings?
I did. Not only that, he bought the main Asphaleth horse for the main stunt double because he got on with the horse so well. And then later he did Hidalgo, and he took that horse home too.
He's just collecting them. And another thing I found that I thought was really interesting is that most of the horses that were in Lord of the Rings were privately owned. They like weren't like movie studio horses. They were like privately owned horses that were like used in the films, which I thought was super cool.
And a lot of the riders are just like, you know, crowd scenes. The riders are just the owners of the horses.
Which is so fun. Like, what a cool thing to do with your horse. Like, imagine being one of those people and being like, yeah, my horse charged down the orcs at the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah, they did, like, because I was following the making of the movies, and they did, like, a big casting call for the Rohirrim, and it was just any age, any gender, but, like, you know, people between these heights and horses between these heights come and try out. And I was like, why can't I live in New Zealand? Because my horse and I would have qualified for this tryout.
Was this when you had Jude?
Yeah. And wouldn't he have had fun?
He would have had a blast. He would have been so cute.
But yeah, most of the Rohirrim in the movies, like the background Rohirrim, are mostly women.
That makes sense. As far as the horses go, another like piece of movie magic that I thought was interesting, because I know one thing that Lord of the Rings in the movies and like Peter Jackson is like really well known for is their forced perspective instead of like weird CGI for the hobbits. And the way that they did that for the horse was that the pony who played Bill was 2 different horses. It was a Shetland pony and a quarter horse. So that way they could maintain the forced perspective, which I thought was so cute. But I also learned that in the blizzard scene, when they're crossing the mountains before they go down into the mines, the blizzard scene was too intense for either one of the horses to do. So it's straight up just 2 guys in a horse suit.
And they had to like hike up the, like get dropped on that mountain and then hike with the horse suit. I mean, I assume they didn't actually put it on till they started filming, but...
That would be a new way to hike all the mountains, would be in a horse suit. Like, how many mountains can you hike if you're sharing a horse suit with another person?
Hiking challenge. You know, doing the 4,000 footers is so last year. Now we're doing them in a horse costume.
You have to carry all your equipment in saddlebags attached to the horse costume. The person in the back is having the worst time of their life.
The person in the front's just like, I prance. The person in the back is like, I think I slipped a disc.
I think so another thing, I have been doing a lot of reading about the history of horses in the real world and where they came from and their domestication and all that fun stuff. And through that, learning a lot about how they have always been like a tool for conquest and are very often the deciding factor in battles, especially, and on a broader scale, wars for like who wins, is like who has the better horses, who has more gear on their horses and things like that, which I think is really cool. And I feel like that's kind of honored in the Lord of the Rings narrative, because I do feel like horses are frequently used in like very titular ways. I mean, I feel like the Battle of Helm's Deep is like one of the most like obvious ones, which is why I keep referencing it. But like everything's lost, everybody's dying, and then the cavalry shows up and it's all better again.
Yeah, because nobody wants to get trampled by a horse when they don't have a horse themselves.
No. Last time I was watching it with my housemate, and like all the orcs turn and like level their pikes and stuff. And my housemate made the comment, he was like, yeah, those pikes are useful against the first horse that runs into them.
Yeah, you don't want to be the person at the front of the charge. Although I know in the movie the orcs just get scared of Gandalf, and so they drop the pikes. And then everybody is safe.
I do recall it being a little bloodier in the books, though.
I mean, pretty much any time horses charged into pikes, it was a little bloody. You know, the root of many of our horse sports today is the military. I mean, that's the name for 3-day eventing in French was la militaire. And specifically, dressage was how the officers trained their horses so that they could use their horse as part of their weaponry. And I do remind my horse of that when we're practicing our dressage. If you don't listen to my outside leg, how are you going to stop the orc charge?
It's funny that you bring that up, too, because the horse who played Bredo, before he was Bredo, was a dressage horse who was successfully competing in FEI events and was trained by Lockie Richards, who was a dressage rider at the time, who has since passed away, which I thought was it's just so full circle. Military comes around, dressage happens, and then dressage horse used to simulate military.
And then we're like, hey, this is how to pretend to be military the best. I thought it was interesting they used so many Andalusians too, because I know Andalusians aren't popularly considered warm bloods, but technically they are in the world of everything is hot, cold, or warm. But those Spanish horses, you know, were war horses and have become popular dressage horses as well, because they're built to like carry themselves in that way. So I thought it was interesting they kind of, you know, went to those route for the horse actors, for the like main horse actors. And unfortunately, they didn't use us for the background horse actors.
They should have flown you in.
Right? Tari wouldn't have met, my current horse wouldn't have met the casting like restrictions anyway because she's smaller. There was like 15.2 to like 16.2 or something like that. Tari is not quite 14.2, so.
But she's perfect. She can shoulder in to knock the orcs off the bridge.
Would 100% knock the orcs. We have been working on our shoulder in this winter specifically. There are a lot of orcs in trouble here in Oregon.
And a lot of training did go into those horses too. Like, also again, shout out to Bredo for who had to fully do his whole little scene after Aragorn falls off the cliff and into the river. He goes over, he has to sniff him and kneel down and like help him up without any cues. Like, he has to just go and do that, and he did it.
I always thought it'd be fascinating to train horses for movies because there's so many different things they learn to do, and that like they train them to do a succession of behaviors. It's not just like we ask the horse to trot and we're like, you keep trotting until I ask you to do something different, right? But like the horse has to trot over and put its head down and turn around, and it's a whole new level of horse training. Well, you consider like when you're training your own horse, all those little moments you have where you're like, okay, I see how we got here, yet this was not how I planned to happen. I was telling my wife the other day about when Tari was a baby, well, not a baby, but like a young horse. She learned very quickly, and she wanted to please. Like, you still to this day, she's about to be 22. Like, and you tell her good, like, you don't need horse treats or like anything, like any sort of reward. You just tell her she's a good girl, and she like puffs up and is so excited about her life. So she loved learning things, and she loved being told she was a good girl. So once she learned something, the next thing you went to teach her, she would just be like, but I know this thing, and you told me I was a good girl last time. Like, how about I do this thing? Will you tell me I'm a good girl again? And then extrapolate that to those movie horse trainers where they know like 300 different tricks. And they're like, yeah, but how about I paw the ground? Because yesterday, that's definitely what you wanted.
Like, lots of impressive moments from like the horse training. And even you know, we have Asphalov who won't let you fall off. But in the movie, Bredo was doing his absolute darndest to make sure that Aragorn didn't fall off either when he was pretty much dead. So
Aragorn's like semi-unconscious and the horse is like, it's okay, we'll go find your friends. Also could be very useful trail riding. Out on the trail and your horse is just like, here, I will get you on my back myself, and then I will take you back to your friends without any guidance.
I definitely played Lord of the Rings on my teeny tiny 12.5-hand pony with my friend growing up. Like, we for sure had lunge whips and charged through the field with our lunge whips. It's a miracle that those horses didn't kill us.
My best friend and I would go to the store and buy those like really cheap like plastic swords, and then we would fight each other until we broke the swords on each other. And then the game would be over. The war has won. Not sure by who. If you thwack somebody like on the helmet with one of the, because you know they're kind of hollow and like flimsy, if you thwack somebody on the helmet, it makes a very satisfying sound.
I'm sure that's really good for the helmet too.
Okay, we weren't thinking about that at like age 13.
Yeah, see, you know my mother. I was for sure not allowed to have toy swords to play with. So it was lunge whips, or when we wanted to fight each other, it was just sticks we found in the woods.
Well, we started with sticks, but they broke too easily. And I feel like I think there was an intermediate version that was like crops, but they hurt a lot.
It's a good lesson in empathy to hit each other with crops.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, these battles had a strict rule that the battles in real life do not, which was you were never allowed to hit the other person's horse. And you're not allowed to hit anyone in the face, but on the head is recommended because of the satisfying thwap that the sword makes on the helmet.
That's incredible.
You know, they talk about civilized warfare. That's what we had going on. And we would come in like with like bruises down our arms from being beaten up.
Incredible. It's good to know that the legacy of bad horse kid choices has always been there.
Like I said, there's some things that we'll have to take to our graves with us. Now we gallop across the field with capes instead of with swords and beating at each other. You've seen the video that my team all wore cape to our last hunter pace, and they actually had a horse of Rohan painted on the back, but it's hard to see in video. And another one of my friends took a video and then set it to the Lord of the Rings theme, the Fellowship theme. I'm imagining what the organizers would think if next time we showed up with capes and swords.
I think you should. Jules has proven himself to be very, very, very okay with being dressed up and being paraded around in ridiculous costumes. And therefore, it is only a matter of time before he becomes a horse of Rohan for an extensive photo shoot.
Yeah. I've always wanted like the sheet over their quarters like the war horses have, and like with the heraldry on it.
Well, I guess you just have to come to Maine so we can all do it. It'll be a blast. Bring Tari.
And I would like to point out for those who don't know, so Tari's full name is Kementari, which is from the Silmarillion. It's the queen, she's the queen of earth is the translation, but it's like Mother Nature, kind of the one who plants the trees and invents the flowers and stuff. And then when my wife got her current horse, because she did a terrible job naming her first horse, I insisted on naming him, and his name is Peregrine Took.
And you didn't think you were signing yourself up for trouble with that name?
Not as much trouble as I'm trying hard not to make any jokes here that are, not safe for public consumption.
I do think we currently have a family rating, so that would probably be good to keep
as PG. But I will just say that Dickie's name came from the fact that there's a British food that comes in a can. It's called Spotted Dick, and you can just extrapolate from there. And if you're too young to extrapolate, then you probably shouldn't. So yes, I feel like Pippin is an improvement there.
Did you get him a Mary?
Well, not yet. There's still many horses to go in our lives. We have to save some. Circling back, Aragorn's horse was Rohirrim. I've been flipping through my, because I knew what chapter it was in. Because in the book, it's the Dunedain that come to find him in Rohan. It's not Elrond. And they bring his own horse from back home. And there's actually a neat, like, when they go to the Paths of the Dead, like, the whole company goes, it's not just 3. And the horses don't want to go in because horses are smarter than people. And it's one of a couple of places that they talk about, like, quote roughly from memory, because that's not the page I'm flipped to right now, but that, like, such was the love of the horses for the Dunedain for their masters that they were willing to go in. But Legolas is riding Arod, And he's like, don't care if you're an elf, I still don't love you enough. And I believe Legolas does eventually convince him to go in, but it's a, like the writing of somebody who was of an age that, he knew something about horses, at least from his youth, and the bond that like the horse and rider can have, which you see like multiple times then with like the Shadowfax Gandalf relationship too. But I like it that there's like the little, Easter eggs of, you ride this horse for years and years and ride him into battle and ride him, all across the world. And he's like, well, okay. Kind of like, I feel like I have these moments with Tari where I'm like, we're going to go here. And she's like, but are we not sure that's a good idea? Have you thought this plan through? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of have. And we kind of are. And she's like, well, okay, you haven't led me wrong yet.
A necessary relationship when you're eventing, I think.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because Tolkien was writing at a time when horses were far more tools than they were pets. So it's cool that we have those relationships in the books, and it would be interesting to know what Tolkien's relationship himself was to the horses in his life too.
I mean, he fought in World War One, and World War One was the last of the wars where like cavalry was really a thing. The mechanization was starting to come in at that time too, but like there were still cavalry regiments, and like he rode when he was at school, and they were training the officers when they were in high school and at that point in history, and he was in a cavalry regiment for that when he was in school. I'm not sure. I think he was in the trenches in World War One, so he wasn't on a horse, but he would have had that some glimpse of that military relationship and military training before it went away. Obviously in World War II, the cavalry Tolkien was too old, and the cavalry also wasn't much of a thing anymore, although there were some, like, Poland tried to use some cavalry and it didn't go well.
Yeah, again. Yeah, the orcs came in with one stick of dynamite and the Rohirrim roll in with tanks. It's a different story.
Right.
Well, that makes sense then. I'm sure that influenced the way that he wrote about horses.
And I would imagine that as a child, like, there would have been still, like, there would have been some just riding horses for transportation still. So, like, he would have also had that just riding the horse to Rivendell, kind of.
Gotta load up Bill the pony.
We have very extensive trails to ride on where we are now, like, hundreds and hundreds of acres of trails. A lot of people don't like to ride once it gets muddy, and I have four-hoof drive. Tari will go anywhere that I point her.
That's the bonus of an Arabian.
Yeah. She also will say, like, so I just stepped into this creek and I can feel the footing going out from under me, so I think maybe we shouldn't today, Mom. And, like the elves, I have a relationship with my horse. So I know, like, there's a certain way that if she says no, like, a certain, like, way that she refuses to do something that I'm like, okay, like, there's a reason here. I shouldn't just kick on. It's actually a very undramatic stop. If she stops dramatically, then it doesn't mean anything. It means that she's enjoying being dramatic. But she's very undramatic, but also very set. I'm not going sideways. I'm not going backwards. I'm not going forwards. Like, until you make your own decision that we are turning and going a different direction, we will not be going anywhere. And then if I, like, as soon as I, like, turn her, she's, on a loose rein, like, head down, like, I'm happy now. You figured it out. Good human. I'm pretty sure she would go on the paths of the dead with me.
Of the horse and rider combos that I know, I think that you and Tari might be the only one. Maverick would tell me to go screw.
Yeah, I don't know what Pippin would do. He's still younger, like, in training, not necessarily in age, because he was feral till he was 4. We did not own him at that time. They had to like rope him to sedate him and gelt him at age 5.
Oh, maybe Pippin is a good name. He deserves some mischief in his life.
He wasn't even started until most horses are firmly going, because you had to, like, be able to touch him first. So in training he's still young, so he doesn't get asked to do as many crazy things yet, because we don't want to overface him. And it is paying off. Like, he did years of, like, poles on the ground and cross rails until he thought they were boring, and now he'll, like, hack you over 2 sick without a second thought.
Amazing. I think Jules will eventually be the horse who would walk through the paths of the dead with you, but again, he is also, he's 5. So I think he would have every right to tuck tail and run.
Yeah.
He'd be like, no. And
you have to build the love of the horse for the rider.
You do. You really do. And we're working on it. And someday he probably would, but not right now. And yeah, Maverick would absolutely be like, no. He's
a pony. Ponies are like, I know that I'm smarter than you.
a late gelded pony, too.
Yeah, I know that I'm smarter than you, and I had enough testosterone to show you.
Yeah, I don't think he was gelded until he was 5.
Was it right before your mom got him, or did she geld him?
She got him to breed him. So he was still a stud when he came to us, and then I fell in love with him and wanted to show him. And she said, okay.
Good stallions make great geldings.
He is a great gelding. I would love, in the next couple of years, to dress my little brother up like Gimli and dress Jules up like a horse of Rohan, so that way I can have that moment.
Will you dress up like Legolas?
Legolas was part of my lesbian awakening. Of course I'll dress up like Legolas.
The only boy that you like really looks like a girl? Is that where we're going? Okay.
Yeah, everyone was like, Aragorn. And I was like, what about Legolas? And I remember my grandmother being like, oh, you like a clean-shaven look, huh? And I was like, I guess so. Turns out it's just like the femininity of it all.
I mean, I have let my wife know that, like, everybody has an exception, and if Aragorn ever shows up at my door, she better just be okay with it. I'd prefer book Aragorn, really. Not that I don't love Vigo. I just originally fell in love with book Aragorn.
See, I feel like a faker, because I did watch the movies before I read the books.
You younger generation.
And actually, one of the first reasons I watched the movies was because my dad recorded them off of live TV and was like,
with the DCR or with the DVR?
No, with the DVR. And was like, Georgia, there's horses in these movies. You should watch them with me. There's horses in them. And that's how he got me to watch Lord of the Rings. And then I was like obsessed. Like, I think I watched specifically Two Towers and Return of the King like a bazillion times. I was an early Fellowship hater because I was a child and didn't understand. As an adult, I now force my other friends to watch the extended edition of Fellowship with me. I'm like, you think there was a lot of walking then? Check out this one.
Wait till you see how much more there can be.
And if you think there's a lot of walking there, you should read the books.
Yes. I've always been Return of the King first fan, both books and movies. I mean, Frodo and Sam, like, walking through Mordor and whining. I don't need too much of that.
No, that's the worst part of both the books and the movies, actually.
And, like, no horses. Come on. What even is there?
Way more invested in the three boys.
Yes. Here's a fun movie horse fact for you. Napoleon's famous charge was 6,000 horse, which is, a very large number of horses. Peter Jackson loved Napoleonic history and always wanted to know what would it really look like, what would a charge of 6,000 horse look like that's just such a huge number to imagine. And coincidentally, I believe entirely coincidentally, by the way, there's no allegory going on here or whatever, the charge, if you do the math, the charge of the Rohirrim at the Pelennor Fields is 6,000 horse. And so Peter Jackson, using largely software, 6,000 might be the population of horses in New Zealand, was able to recreate that thing that he had always dreamed of seeing, the cavalry charge with 6,000 horse.
That's amazing. It is impressive.
Yeah, and now we all know what it looks like. So now you know what Napoleon's cavalry looked like too, just, with different banners.
Oliphants are impressive and all, but they only had 5 of them.
Right? They're bigger. They take longer to copy and paste.
Requires more RAM and processing power.
Right. I don't remember the exact numbers, but when they were doing the post processing for those movies, there's a list, I'm sure it still exists, of all the biggest supercomputers in the world, and of the this is what I can't remember if it was 10 or 20 biggest supercomputers in the world. It was 3 or 4 of them were owned by Weta Digital for their movie processing.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
To make courses for us.
That's incredible.
I've been unpacking boxes from New Hampshire, and I unpacked my Tolkien box, and Trish was like, oh, look, another set of the Lord of the Rings. Oh, look, another set of the Lord of the Rings. Oh, look, what's that? And I was like, that's the Silmarillion, not the Lord of the Rings.
Nerd credentials recertified.
They're all very different editions.
Are they that different, though?
Well, there's typos that have been corrected over time.
Fair. Well, I think on that, we can probably wrap up. Thank you, Jennie, for coming on and nerding out with me about Lord of the Rings. This was so much fun. I had a blast. And yeah, any final thoughts?
All of you younger generation, go read the book. Then you'll know the name of Aragorn's horse.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Read the books. They're good. And if you like world building even a little bit, you will have a great time.
And I feel like you can imagine yourself, like, in it. You know, we talk about, like, galloping around the fields when you're a kid. Like, you can imagine yourself in it better if you're reading the books, because then, like, your imagination gets to do all of it. Like,
Yes.
nobody's like, telling you this is what it look, you know. Well, you couldn't be there because look at those mountains. Those aren't at all like your mountains, you know.
And you don't just have to look at perfect Andalusians. You can imagine your little mutt in there.
Like, Mary's Rohirrim pony is described as being shaggy. I love it.
That could be anybody.
I mean, it was winter. So imagine those, like, little, like, shaggy Shetland ponies who have, like, coats that are, like, 3 feet long in the winter.
Well, thank you very much. And I will talk to you later.
Have fun.